So use of stem cells. So we went through the whole process and we've looked at different types of stem cells, different types of cells in the body, how they become specialised, what we mean by differentiation, okay? And now we have to look at, well, we've got these stem cells and you've just told me that scientists can remove stem cells from an embryo, from the blastocyst, okay, and they're pluripotent. So what can the scientists use? So why would the scientists go through that process in the first place? What is the use of stem cells? And the two use that we want you guys to kind of focus on is therapeutic and research. And you need to be careful, because sometimes what will happen is the SQA, and you'll see that from your homework this week, the SQA will ask you questions and they will put these words into the question, and your role is to make sure that you can tell the difference between, because if the question asks in relation to research and you answer in relation to therapeutic uses, you're not going to get the mark. Okay, so if you think of it in a way, when we talk about therapeutic, we're talking about therapy, we're talking about the actual use of them within the organism. Okay, so the first one is repair of damaged or diseased organs or tissues. Okay, so we're talking about regeneration of cells, and that's when we can we talk about skin grafts. Okay, if somebody's had a high degree of burns in their body, okay, they can use these stem cells in relation to that particular type of tissue that has been damaged, okay, to help regenerate the damaged skin. Okay, another one is the corneal repair. So the cornea is obviously within your eye, okay, and they can use these stem cells to help the diseased organ, which in this time we're talking about the repair of the cornea found in your eye. Okay, so therapeutic, think of it as therapy. What are we actually doing within that organism? Okay, and when we talk about research, again, research, if you can, it's not necessarily the specifics in the doing on the organism, okay, it's more of what the scientists do away from the organism with the use of stem cells. How can the stem cells help the scientists research away from the organism? Okay, and this is when we talk about model cells, and when we talk about model cells, we're just talking about differentiating them, you know, changing the stem cell, so differentiating the stem cell, switching the genes off to make the cell specialised and helping in relation to certain types of diseases. Because as we know, unfortunately, the human body is affected in quite a high degree in relation to different types of diseases, but different types of diseases act on different parts of the body, which means it's acting on different tissues and different cells within the body. So what the scientists will do is they will grow these cells, i.e. they will differentiate these cells into whether it's liver tissue, whether it's cardiac, whether it is the cells in relation to the cornea. And what they'll do is they will look at these cells and look at how they react in certain circumstances. Okay, they'll start playing about the genetics, they'll start switching the genes on and off in relation to how does the disease develop in the first place. Okay, and then when they can work out how the disease develops, that's when they can start working out about what types of drugs could be used to combat the disease. So instead of, and this is the kind of argument about using embryonic stem cells, is that we're no longer testing on animals. Okay, and again, that's a kind of individual personalised belief system. However, we can test the drug against that individual cell or that tissue to see how the drug acts on the disease. Okay, so therapeutic and research, different responses we require if the question comes up within an assessment. Okay, and I thought I'd give you a very quick example of how we use stem cells in relation to therapy in relation to multiple sclerosis. So those in my class will know I've spoke lots about my best friend who went to Mexico last October. Her and her husband was out there for a month getting a stem cell treatment for her multiple sclerosis. Okay, and this is the kind of process that she went through. So it gives you a kind of real example of how we use stem cells in therapy. all right? So the first thing that happened to her was they had to basically remove her stem cells from her bone marrow, okay? So here's her stem cells. So stem cells moved from bone marrow to bloodstream using chemotherapy and synthetic growth factor. So they were basically wanting lots of these stem cells. So that's why they used the growth factor, okay? And then what they're doing is they're trying to remove from the bone marrow all of these stem cells, these specific stem cells. But what they do is they use chemotherapy twice in this process, as you hear here and here, okay? So the process goes like this, okay? Along in this order, all right? So they're using a specialised type of chemotherapy to extract the stem cells from the bone marrow, okay? And what happens is a specific type of machine, and it's, you know, it's, yes, there is a syringe that's obviously goes into skin, but most importantly, it's a large machine that's going to collect the blood, okay? And then what's happening is it's separating out the stem cells. So the blood basically is returned back to her system, but the stem cells remain out with her body, okay? And then the stem cells are taken away and frozen, okay? Because what's going to happen is these important stem cells, remember these stem cells, okay? Because we're talking about, so when we talk about multiple sclerosis, it's basically an autoimmune disease. So what's happening is her immune system, okay, is attacking her neurons, attacking the outer lining of her neurons, okay? And again, we'll talk about this in greater depth when we get you back in school and we start looking at Unit 3, okay? But essentially what's happening is the cells that are attacking her neurons are in her bone marrow. Remember I says in the last video, it's all to do with her immune system. And your lots of your immune cells, okay, are found within your bone marrow, okay? So what's going to happen is those stem cells, okay, we're going to return to her body later on, but we have to try and eradicate those immune cells that are attacking her neuron cells first. Okay, so this is the next part of the therapy. So it says, more chemotherapy used to fully or partially wipe out bone marrow and immune system. So the chemotherapy, is basically a large dose of specific types of chemical that eradicates almost all types of fast growing cells in the body, okay? So your immune cells differentiate very, very quickly. It's very important that our immune system has lots of cells in it to function, because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we are inundated with lots of different types of microbes all the time, okay? So we're under attack all the time, but our immune system just ticks along and protects us and prevents us from becoming unwell. However, in my friend's system, as I say, her immune system is attacking her neurons. So she's given a large dose of chemotherapy to kill off, basically, to wipe out those immune cells that are badly affecting her neurons, okay? And then what happens is when they get to a point and they're measuring her blood, they're measuring the number of cells in her body at all times. At one point she texts me and she says, I've been told apparently I've only got about 200 immune cells in my body, just 200, when you normally have millions of cells in your body, okay? So as soon as she gets to a level where they know that her immune system is completely wiped out, these immune cells that are attacking her neurons are no longer there, okay? They return these stem cells back into her body, okay? And the whole point is that these stem cells turn into new immune cells that no longer attack her nerve cells, attack this outer coating of her neurons, okay? And then obviously the last point is the recovery, and this is the kind of danger area here because she's no immune system, and she got her therapy through over in Mexico. So she's currently, I mean, that was last October, and she's out of work for a year, and they reckon she probably won't be able to go out the house for about 6 months. So she's kind of hoping about March time she's going to be able to start going out for a walk. Because again, she has to be monitored closely in relation to her immune system. So obviously with COVID and everything, it's been pretty intense for her. But again, it's very weird to see this, but there has been a bit of a blessing with lockdown and schools being shut, because she's got a 13-year-old daughter. So because schools have been shut and her husband is a lecturer at a college in Glasgow, the bonus is the fact that they're all in the system, so all in the house. So her daughter's not going out to school, her husband's not going out to work, so that gives her even more protection in relation to the current pandemic. Okay, so a real example of how we can use stem cells in relation to different types of diseases.